independent haulers throughout the United States and in countries globally, as well as waste generators, companies that create waste and recycling and materials. And through our technology platforms and business model, we aim to create sustainable outcomes for the materials. We have over 3.3 million service locations, 45 plus patents, 7,000 hauling partners, and we're in all 50 states and have select operations in 22 countries worldwide. Today, I am honored and privileged to be sharing this panel with some of the sharpest, smartest, and really forward-thinking leaders in sustainability. With me on this panel is Caitlin Liebert. She is the head of sustainability at Chipotle Mexican Grill. She's really the mind behind their sustainability plan, really thinking through everything that they've done on sustainability in their current journey. She's been there for over 13 years and has a master's degree in sustainability from the Cambridge University. In addition, sharing the panel today with us is Jeremy Faust. He's the Assistant Vice President of Environmental Sustainability at Fifth Third Bank, a really strong bank based largely out of the Midwest and the Southeast, but a real leader when it comes to environmental sustainability in the financial services industry. Jeremy has a law degree from George Washington University and previous work with the government of the District of Columbia. And the final panelist and participant with me today is Michael Kobori. He is the first ever Chief Sustainability Officer of Starbucks. And before that, he had an illustrious career in sustainability at Levi Strauss & Company, working there for over 22 years and really creating trailblazing initiatives when it comes to energy reduction, water, and sustainability in the apparel industry. And before I dive into the dialogue itself, I did want to put in perspective the real impact that this group collectively can have. As a collective group, these organizations employ around 300,000 employees globally and have locations at over 33,000 different places. And these locations are throughout the United States and globally. They're in Middle America, Urban America, everywhere America. And that means that the impact can be truly universal, widespread, and very kind of cross-functional. So this group really speaks with a very powerful voice when it comes to thinking through ESG and sustainability. So without any further ado, I'll dive right into the questions because that, I'm sure, is why most of the audience came here today. So ESG is a very broad topic, and it's one that has really become more of a common phrase, environmental, social governance, as we react to the pandemic and all of these challenges around that it's created, external challenges that aren't necessarily cogent or core to the precise business operations of these companies, but nonetheless have significant impact on business outcomes. But I do want to focus for a moment on the E, the environmental aspect of sustainability, and ask my colleagues on this panel to describe the top environmental goals and targets and the journey to create them. And Michael, I'd love to start with you. And in January of this year, Starbucks came out with a very ambitious, newsworthy 2030 environmental targets, and embedded in them is a phrase that really resonated with me. And it's one that I had not heard before, but one that I really have started to really create as part of my own narrative related to sustainability, and that is becoming resource positive. Could you describe a bit what that phrase means and how it transcends throughout the Starbucks 2030 goals?
Sure. David, thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And when we Starbucks has been working on a number of sustainability issues for a long time throughout our history, starting with our coffee sustainability practices that we pioneered with Conservation International 20 years ago. But in January, as you indicate, we set out this new ambition for the company, which is to become resource positive, or as our CEO, Kevin Johnson, likes to say, planet positive. And it really means that, yes, we have measured our footprint in our key material areas of carbon, water, and waste. But we really aspire long-term to go beyond simply reducing that footprint and getting to zero. We actually want to, in those three areas, create more good, or literally contribute more of that resource back and begin to restore the resources of the planet. So it's a very long-term ambition and vision. We have set some preliminary goals, and that is by 2030, we want to reduce our footprint by half in those three areas. So that's our next big milestone. But beyond that, we don't want to stop there. We want to keep going and eventually get to, as you've mentioned, planet positive.
Thank you. And I know that it really made news in not only sustainability circles, but business circles across the board. And this concept of not only reducing impact, but also regenerating kind of the impact on the environment, and to your point, becoming planet positive. So that's really, really exciting to hear. Turning for a moment to Chipotle and Caitlin, this motto really sounds perfect for Chipotle and the brand ethos. And the motto is cultivate a better world. And it really seems to cover all aspects of being a purpose-driven company and a responsible restaurant chain, national restaurant chain that Chipotle is known for. Could you describe what this ethos and mantra means, and really how it's manifesting itself at the locations and with the patrons?
Sure, absolutely. I think, first of all, thank you for having me. It's great to be here on this panel.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, working for a purpose-driven brand means, many things to our 95,000 plus employees. But, in talking with our employees, it's clear that this mission to cultivate a better world, or this vision to cultivate a better world, is a key part of why they like to work for us. And I think that that's really important to start with. It isn't just a motto, it's part of who we are as a brand. Many people know Chipotle as a brand that has been dedicated to food with integrity from nearly the beginning of our journey. But we're also just as dedicated to environmental and social sustainability. And I think recently, certainly in the last 5+ years, we've had more and more headlines around these areas, and more work and goal setting has been done. So, our efforts to cultivate a better world go beyond, and I should say through and beyond, food systems, right? We talk about cultivating a better world in terms of food and animals, right? With that food with integrity, with people, whether it's our employees, our suppliers, our customers, and then through the environment. And I think what we can probably all agree on in this space is that those aren't siloized things, right? They're all interconnected. So this idea of cultivating a better world goes beyond any one of these areas. And we want it that way, right? We want our opportunity to be beyond just this idea of food. We do believe that food has the power to change the world. And that is why we have such a massive vision or mission. And again, what a thrilling space to work in this area, to be able to say that my life's work through Chipotle is to cultivate a better world is not a day goes by that I don't realize that I'm probably one of the luckiest people alive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the nice aspects of being a sustainability professional. But what's really great about all of these companies is that the sustainability and purpose missions are so embedded that it really transcends all functions. But I completely agree. So now going into a different sector, the banking and financial services sector, Jeremy, I would love to get your thoughts on this question around, the major environmental priorities for Fifth Third Bank. You all have really shown some impressive leadership when it comes to renewable energy, becoming the first publicly traded company worldwide and the first U.S. bank and Fortune 500 company to sign a contract that leads to 100% renewable energy through solar power. And so hats off for that leadership. But, on that topic or any other topics, when it comes to your all's environmental priorities, how would you describe them?
Yeah, thanks, David, and thanks to Rubicon for the forum today. This is a great conversation. So the latest iteration, I think, of our sustainability journey began in 2017 when we publicly launched our first set of operational sustainability goals. We set goals to reduce energy and greenhouse gas emissions by 25%, water and waste by 20%, and to get to 100% renewable power by 2022. And I'm proud to say we've now accomplished 3 of those goals a few years early. The renewable power goal was particularly ambitious for us and really for our industry, as none of our peers had achieved such a goal. So, it took a lot of strong support from our corporate leadership, but we focused our attention on something we thought was kind of a stretch for our organization, but achievable overall, which is the completion of a virtual power purchase agreement as a mechanism to acquire renewable power. After a 3-year journey, we completed that effort just last year with the opening of the Allender Holloman solar facility. It's an 80 megawatt solar project, which provides us with more than 200,000 megawatt hours of power annually, which is essentially enough to account for our entire operational footprint within a given year. So this has been great for our organization and for our focus and commitment to sustainability. And today, actually, we're taking the next bold step in that journey. I'm pleased to share, really to announce our latest goal, which we're just sharing publicly today, a new goal that builds upon the success that we've had to date. Fifth Third is now committing to perform $8 billion in sustainable financing over the coming 5 years. This includes lending and financing for renewable energy projects, solar, wind, geothermal, biomass, hydropower, and really builds upon work that we've done in renewable energy lending and capital raising services, which have helped generate over 3.5 gigawatts of renewable energy projects. In 2018, we established a National Renewable Energy Finance Center of Excellence to support more of these projects. Last year, we added a renewable energy investment banking team to kind of grow this expertise. And this work and the new commitment that we're making today expands our focus on partnering with our customers in ways that can have a positive overall impact for their business, but on the planet as well. And by supporting those customers through the financing of these projects, our organization has an opportunity to be a part of the solution that we're all moving towards to address climate change. So today's a big day for us, and I'm excited to be able to share this as part of Climate Week.
Well, that really is a extremely positive and really impressive announcement. And thank you for sharing that here and also this week. And I imagine that you won't have a lack of interest in that because of this focus on sustainable finance and the capital needed to really start these projects. And that's so encouraging to hear because probably one of the hardest aspects of transitioning to a more renewably energy-based society is the capital and the means to really start up these projects, to get them off the ground so that they can get in a perpetual state of operation. So that's really great to hear from Fifth Third. So thank you for that. And I'm sure we can talk more about that as this conversation moves forward. Switching, staying on the E for a moment, and since Rubicon and my work is largely focused on the waste and recycling industry, I would be remiss not to talk for a moment about the circular economy and what are some of the barriers and opportunities that you all see in really realizing this aspiration and making it a reality. And so, Caitlin, I'll start with you on this question. Chipotle really showed some leadership in this area with a initiative that turned latex gloves that had no real solution prior to this initiative, besides the landfill, into a new product, a new life. So, and that is in the form of bags. And so that is a great example. But how does Chipotle really think about circularity, whether it's on this initiative or food upcycling or any other areas in this area?
Yeah, great question. And you've tapped into a major personal passion of mine. I really geek out, as they say, on the circular economy. I think it's an important element, certainly to waste sustainability. And I would say in terms of a sustainable economy moving forward as well. I think for us, there is no substitution for, a foundational program if we're talking about waste specifically. So that means diverting as much of our cardboard as we can, diverting as much of our plastic as we can in the common recycling streams. But one of the things that we noticed, and Chipotle has a pretty aggressive goal of 50% diversion by the end of this year, meaning keeping half of all the waste that we produce at our 2,600 plus locations, headquarters, everywhere as a brand, out of the landfill. And in order to do that, we had to innovate, right? The existing infrastructure did not allow for us to divert all of our waste. So we are recycling cardboard everywhere we can. We are recycling plastic everywhere we can, to the extent that we can. We're composting almost everywhere we can. The infrastructure isn't quite there yet. We have it at over 700 of our locations. It's also pretty expensive, as you know, right? Mm-hmm. So that led us, we were hitting at a wall around 45, 47% of our waste diversion. If we wanted to achieve 50%, we had to get creative about the solution. And that is where we took a page from the circular economy. So the glove to bag program that you speak of is actually for our high density polyethylene gloves, not latex gloves. And it takes those gloves. Yeah, absolutely. So sure. I should note the reason why we're able to do this is actually something very simple that many brands overlook or maybe don't publicize as much as we do. And that is waste audits. Waste audits are the core of our diversion program. We get in the dumpster many times a year, much to my team's dismay. And we actually physically get in there, and sometimes with our partners from Rubicon as well. And we're hand sorting all the waste. And we've done this hundreds of times now. And that means that we have an extensive, transparent look into our waste. And we know then what strategy we need to take in order to achieve our goals. And we noticed that 9% of our waste was film plastic. And this is plastic that isn't commonly recyclable. And it wasn't actually the straw that was driving that, but rather gloves. The vast majority of that 9% were these disposable gloves. And there's nothing we can do about, I shouldn't say there's nothing, but gloves and disposable gloves are a necessary part of our job function, right? So what can we do? And that's where we had to take a page from the circular economy. So we looked at what the material was, HDPE, and we thought, okay, what else in our restaurant is made from HDPE, and ideally recycled HDPE? And we found a hit, which was with one of our waste bags. And so we worked with that supplier to make that possible. We partnered with Rubicon for a ship back program. And we looked at the overall sustainability of where could we roll this out so that it was doing more positive than it was not, right? So that was a start. We then moved on, to your point, to avocado pits, to our natural dye line. So, we're one of the largest purchasers of avocados in the world, which meant that indirectly, we were the #3 producer of avocado pits in the world, right? I mean, massive, just random fact that you wouldn't know until you were in the dumpster sorting through them. And so we were able to turn those avocado pits where we can't recycle them, or compost them, right? What can we do with them? There's a few things that we're investigating, but one of them is we know that avocado pits make a beautiful natural dye, which is that gorgeous millennial pink color. So we recently launched that as well. So this is, second, third, maybe fourth trip into the circular economy for us. We continue to want to tap into it. I just want to note that it cannot be the foundation. These programs are on top of a foundational waste program, or else it goes to that greenwashing space that we really want to stay away. But to help us incrementally achieve those goals, it's been vital for us.
Well, those are both really, those are really textbook examples of the circular economy. And you're absolutely right on the dumpster diving and the waste audits. Before I got into this space, audits were just something that you looked at in grad school and financial statements, but it takes a whole new meaning when you get into a dumpster and you audit what's there. But to your point, you really need to understand what's in the waste, where it's coming from, and what are the pain points. And these are great examples. And Chipotle is absolutely a leader in this space, and that's exciting news on the avocado to solution as well. To your point, no, that's something not many people really know, but with that, you have a lot of scale and can make a big difference. So Michael, what are your thoughts and Starbucks' views on circularity and just the whole challenge of waste? I know that reusable cups was a big movement. Then it got put on pause a bit through the COVID crisis, and then just recently, there was some big news around those stubborn straws, and so there's a lot of, I think, opportunity in the Starbucks business. But how do you all think about it, and what are some of your objectives in this area of circularity? Not sure if I may come back to Michael on that point. There could be some technical issues going on there. Jeremy, your thoughts on circularity and waste as it relates to Fifth Third Bank?
Yeah, thank you, David. In a lot of ways, we're still building upon our foundation, as Caitlin referred to. Waste is such a behavioral issue for us, right? You can't change a light bulb and expect to achieve your goals in an area like this. You really need to kind of get buy-in and support from employees, from customers to be successful in the long term. So in addition to the typical mixed recycling stream, we have focused a lot on paper. Paper is a big part of the journey for us. It's such a significant part of our business, right? We don't have a traditional tangible product, but we do a lot with paper, from consumer retail transactions to larger commercial business banking. And a big part of the solution is just the digitization journey. That journey has been underway for a while. We are, of course, still moving more and more of our processes and transactions to a digital framework, which are not only able to reduce the environmental impact or the environmental of the paper we're using, but can actually create efficiencies for us and mitigate risk for us, which is a double win. And the pandemic certainly accelerates a lot of that happening as we're trying to, support a population and a customer base that's increasingly trying to do business with us remotely. Thinking about paper usage, we've recycled more than, I think, about 7 million pounds of paper within the past year. So a lot still to be done in reducing the amount of paper that we use. But I think this illustrates why the topic is an important one and why we're trying to focus more on it. I'm hopeful that just the process of people working from home, as so many of our employees are today, starts to set a new standard for reduced paper usage. Those not coming into the office are not printing from the office. But I also expect that fewer people are printing from home or printing less at home. So hopefully that's one of those trends that we can build into a more standard process as people come back to the office and continue to drive down that paper usage that we're focused on.
Absolutely. And I know we've had some kind of conversations as well offline around what is the impact of work from home on sustainability. This could be one of those major impacts related to paper and other office-related waste, but I'm sure that a lot more will come about around how to really approach that as a profession. But certainly in the financial services industry, I'm sure there's a lot of regulations around what you have to print before digitizing it, et cetera. So I can definitely see where that's a big pain point. Michael, so on circularity at Starbucks, just wanted to give you a moment to talk about that. I had mentioned earlier related to concepts of reusability and how that was something Starbucks was really gaining momentum on before the pandemic, and it got put on pause, but I've noticed that it's coming back in certain locations, as well as those stubborn straws. But any thoughts around circularity and how you all are approaching it?
Well, David, as you know from our conversations, I am very passionate about the disposable cup. And one of my missions at Starbucks is to basically get rid of that cup. It is a symbol of waste of our society, and we're responsible for it. So we need to do something about it. We did have to put our reusable programs on pause during COVID, but we really haven't lost momentum. We redoubled our efforts. We used that time to do innovation research, continue to test some of the programs that we developed through the Next Gen Cup Challenge that we launched a couple of years ago, where we and others invested over $10 million in trying to figure out the solution to the disposable cup. So we and McDonald's and Coca-Cola and Nestle and a bunch of other companies got together because it's a problem for all of us, right? And so what we have done is, what we've been doing now is bringing back, and there are 3 use cases, okay? So the first use case for getting to replacing those disposable cups is what we call the personal cup. So, right, the customer brings in their own cup and they want it refilled, right? Or they want it filled. So that's really, in my mind, one of the best approaches, because it's the customer's own cup and we're not creating anything new, right? And they reuse it and it's theirs. There's something personal about it. And so we had to pause that, of course. We have now developed safe handling procedures. So in many countries, we just relaunched that program in Europe last month, in Canada recently, and we're all set to be able to relaunch that program of personal cup usage in the U.S. as soon as COVID permits. So we're all ready to do that. The second use case is, of course, when somebody goes into the cafe and they sit there and have their beverage, then can they use either their personal cup or what we want to be providing, like we used to a while back, is a permanent cup, right? And make that the default. So we're working on that. We haven't reopened our cafes in this country yet, but when we do, we want to be able to have that option. The third use case, of course, is the customer who takes away the cup, right? And in that case, what we've been working on is a cup share program where it's a actual permanent cup or a plastic cup or a hopefully biodegradable plastic kind of cup that they use, and they can bring it back. They put it in a dispenser, kind of like we used to do with the old Coke bottles, for those who are old enough to remember. Not you, but probably people like me, right? So create that kind of a system, a cup share system. And we were ready to test that. We started testing that before COVID. We're going to be relaunching the proof of concept and reintroducing that, again, after we get done with these tests. But we're still in process of testing, because we got to figure out this this disposable cup issue?
Absolutely. I mean, that is something certainly that it's really squarely associated with Starbucks, but at the same time, there's enormous power of the company to make that change. And it kind of, what came to mind was, I mean, Starbucks ultimately is in the business of selling coffee. It just, you have to have a cup to for someone to drink the coffee, similar to, buying shampoo. They just need the plastic bottle to get you the shampoo. And so if there is a way, I mean, these three proof cases are so valuable. And perhaps, a silver lining is that due to COVID-19, there's some opportunities to perfect and really get those proof cases to, in order to roll out, right when it's done. But that would be massive amount of change. And so it's great to hear that in Circularity.
And David, just to add quickly, I think those three use cases are the use cases that can apply to anything that is packaged right now, right? So for any packaged good, you can bring your own container, whether it's, coffee or a food item, right? You can bring your own container. That's one option and get it filled. Another option is to have a container that is provided to you that is biodegradable, right? And the third option, of course, is to be able to have some sort of a system where it's that container that is reusable. You bring it back, and the purveyor reuses it. So you create a system that doesn't use any additional resources.
I mean, that is kind of the panacea, if you will, of circularity, because if you think about all of the challenges, when most people associate the single-use plastic challenge with some form of product packaging. So if you could really get rid of that single use, then it would have transcendent impact on marine life and all sorts of other stuff. So that's really exciting to hear. Now staying with you for a moment, Michael, and switching topics from the E part of ESG to reporting, ESG reporting. That is gaining so much momentum in the business world, in the financial world, but there's a alphabet soup of different reporting entities, SASB, GRI, CDP, TCFSD, and SBTI, et cetera.
So there's lots.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, it's like a tongue twister. Thank you. How does Starbucks, determine which ones to focus on? And, do you see a winner, kind of like Beta versus VHS one day? Is there going to be a default non-financial ESG related reporting entity that really aligns everything?
A couple thoughts here, David. One is we are in, I think, it's a very great time. We're in that time where there's, as you've indicated, there's almost 1,000 flowers blooming in this space of ESG reporting.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing, right? If I think about 10 years ago, this is what we dreamed of, to have all kinds of different reporting options and many different investors, other entities reporting on companies' ESG performance. Great. Love it, right?
Right.
As you say, and of course, with any time when there's 1,000 flowers blooming, there will be consolidation eventually and gravitation towards certain ones. Right now, what Starbucks is doing is we are reporting on some of the longstanding and key indicators or programs that are out there, like the CDP. We also do some of the others that are out there that are widely accepted. What I believe is that this is great, but ultimately where we need to go is to focus on those material indicators in environment, in social and governance, that are material to that sector, right? Because the factors that are material to food and beverage, right, climate, water, waste, and of course people, if you're in the restaurant business, are different than the factors associated with like the apparel industry where I came from, right? Which is still climate and water. Those are pretty common to almost everybody. But for apparel, chemicals is another big one because of the processing that goes on. And of course, people because of the manufacturing. So in every sector, you're going to have those key material factors. That's what I believe is important for companies in that sector to report on and for investors to respond to and to recognize. I guess the other thing that you mentioned that I just wanted to comment on, you said non-financial indicators. Well, I actually believe that ESG, environment, social, and governance factors are very financial.
Right.
Big financial implications. And so we talk about reporting, we talk more and more about integrated reporting. And so as we report on ESG, our vision is to do that integrated report and associate our ESG metrics and milestones with financial impact and meld those so that investors and other stakeholders can see the actual financial impact of the work that we and of course others are doing in environment, social, and governance issues.
That is a great answer, and you're right about the integrated need of financial and non-financial. And I think you're absolutely right. This is a really important time because there is so much focus and there's so many people thinking about it, and all these different reporting entities are coming up. And while it may create more work for us as sustainability leaders to actually report on those, ultimately, to your point, it's a really good thing because there's so much focus on this. And kind of keeping, you mentioned 1,000 flowers blooming. I got Jeremy sitting in front of some gorgeous flowers. So I'm going to just go right to you, Jeremy, on this concept. How do you, it's in the, in keeping with the concept of different industries, which, and things being material, in the financial services and Fifth Third, what are you all seeing as it relates to ESG reporting frameworks?
Yeah, thanks, David. This is my 1,000 flowers blooming background I use for ESG presentations. So 2020's been a big year for us around ESG issues. We've spent a lot of time over the past year taking stock of everything that's happening in the industry, of these 1,000 flowers that we see kind of blooming all around us. And undoubtedly hearing more from our stakeholders, from customers to employees to shareholders, asking us questions about these various ESG issues. So we feel ready to be making important strides in the area. And indeed, our inaugural ESG report will be available starting next week. So this is a big step for us. The report will include a series of enhancements in alignment with a number of these internationally recognized reporting frameworks. So, more to your question, starting this year, we began reporting within the GRI and SASB frameworks. Each is relatively broad in scope, so they capture a number of reporting items that we've not previously disclosed before. CDP has been part of our ongoing annual reporting framework for a decade. And again, through steady focus and kind of increased disclosure, we've ramped up our ranking to an A- just within the past year. So another good milestone for Fifth Third. And because we're in the financial services industry, we've been particularly focused on the recommendations of the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, as you mentioned earlier, which offers guidance primarily related to climate risk. We've also thought it wise to kind of do a separate report on the climate-related financial disclosure elements for our organization. So a lot of focus that we're putting into this area as we recognize that there's a lot of questions out there. Our new ESG report will expand really significantly from kind of the prior iteration, our CSR report, And that new report now includes 25 pages of indices, again, that are framed around these various standards. And like everything else, providing reporting in each of these areas as you work to kind of compile the information, discuss reporting within the organization, and then ultimately publicly disclose, it does shift the conversation. So, that's a win for our stakeholders, and I think it's ultimately a win for us as well.
Absolutely, and going back to this initiative that you all announced today, I would imagine that a lot of these frameworks and the reporting on them likely will play a role in how that capital is allocated. And so I imagine that as sustainable finance grows, then the reporting will grow as well. Caitlin, do you have any thoughts on this topic as well as it relates to Chipotle and kind of your perch as the head of sustainability over there?
Yeah, definitely. How could I not, right? This is such an important topic when it comes to sustainability. And actually, when Michael was talking, my head was sore from nodding so aggressively. I don't know if everyone saw that, but I think we share a very, very similar idea about this. So, I don't want to say what he said again, but to add on to that, in my opinion, there is no one size fits all for reporting. The most important thing is that we are, as sustainability leaders, working towards transparently disclosing our impact in a way that is material to our business. For us right now, that's GRI. We report to a GRI standard. The reporting that we do must be grounded in materiality, meaning we exactly the example that Michael gave. What is most material to Chipotle is not what's most material to a diamond brand or a technology company necessarily. And I think this, as sustainability practitioners, I think we must work very hard to do what we can to stay away from greenwashing. And this is one of the key areas that brands and companies get in trouble for greenwashing, right? So let's say that, for us, it's really important to talk about our suppliers and the issues that impact agriculture. But if we just talk about the volunteer hours that we had at our headquarters, that doesn't really tackle what's most material to our business. So again, these are examples of how not to be material in your reporting.
Right.
But I think just one note on that no one has hit on yet, but I think is really relevant, which is that people, especially generation the generations that are coming up right now, right?
Right.
I think there is a desire for a humble and transparent approach to what we're doing. No one really wants to hear how great we are, right? No one wants to just read a report and say, wow, pat on the back, right? We want to be able to transparently say, yes, here's what we did, here's where we're going, here's how we're going to get there, right? Here are opportunities. We have I think that resonates with this current generation, which is great. So I think there's a more humble tone that we can all take in our reporting that I think is important. Mm-hmm. It's challenging as a brand to do that sometimes. And we are really proud of the work that we've done, so we don't want to undersell that. But I think if we can look at reporting as a way to transparently and humbly show what our opportunities are and our strategy to get there, I think we can maybe take reporting to the next level.
Absolutely. And to your point, it's a way to really demonstrate objectively progress and really combat against some of these accusations or concerns around legitimacy and sustainability. So that's a great point you raised on that topic. So what I may do right now, since we're approaching the last 15 minutes, is open up or share with you some of the questions from the audience, and then reserve maybe 5 minutes or so for any closing thoughts. And Michael, I'm going to start with you. This question came in very early, and so I wanted to provide it first to you. It was addressed to you, and it says, how does Starbucks address ESG in terms of how it invests in its business? And so that perhaps is related to KPIs and other aspects. But what are your thoughts on that question from one of the participants?
David, when it comes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you right now.
So when it comes to investing in our business, we do have very specific goals and programs around sustainability. And so those get reflected in the investments that we're making. We like to think about it I would say, in three ways. One is just in our day-to-day operations, in the way we run our business, right? There are investments that are different functions that different markets are making all the time on an annual basis in sustainability programs, whether those are set on plant-based menu items, for example, right? That's an investment part of ongoing operations. Okay, so that's one, and that's deeply embedded in the business. One of the things that I really believe in, you've got to embed sustainability in the business. The business has to own it in order to be successful. Second place where we invest is through our balance sheet cash. And so we were one of the first companies to actually come out with what is known today as a green bond, a sustainability bond, and we use that balance sheet cash to then invest in sustainability programs. To date, I believe it's over $250 million invested in that way in sustainability programs. The last way we invest is actually through partners. One of the things that I experienced at Levi's, and I reference Levi's because I've only been at Starbucks for 9 months now, but what we were able to do when I was at Levi's, we partnered with different institutions like the World Bank, which through its International Finance Corporation invests in, for example, renewable energy and recycled water equipment in suppliers all around the world. And so we were able to partner with the World Bank and really make a dent in supply chain carbon emissions and supply chain water programs. And the World Bank is just one example of the multilateral organizations, but increasingly impact investors and financial institutions, like we've just heard about from Jeremy, that are investing more and more in sustainability. And so that's kind of even outside of the company's own funds. There are these kinds of external financing partnerships that are huge opportunities for us as we go forward. And Jeremy can speak much more eloquently and knowledgeably to that than I can, but that is also something that we're seeing.
Absolutely, and to your point, the green bonds that Starbucks really started to issue was again, there may have been other companies, but to me, you all were first movers in this area in terms of really raising it to the level of attention that it needed. And that's a good example. And now there's a sustainable finance that Jeremy and Fifth Third are undertaking. So that's really important. Another audience question, and this one was for Caitlin, related to the avocado. I think that probably sparked a bit of interest out there, but it's really the concept or the topic of, is there any concern about the water usage that is attributed to avocado cultivation? And really more broadly, what are some of the initiatives or thoughts around water for Chipotle?
Yeah, definitely. And I want to answer that quickly. One thing I want to add to what David said, which I think is really important, because he spoke so eloquently about it. I think just a note on investment is people often think just about what a business can invest in and throughout their supply chain, right? And I think that is an important component. And of course, with Chipotle, we pay a premium for food with integrity. We want to have one of the highest food costs that is well managed, but we invest in that food, right? But additionally to what I think Michael was saying was there's also an opportunity to invest in the system as a whole. And how can we improve the system, not just our supply chain that operates within that system. So I think there are two key areas that companies have an opportunity to look at. For us, we do that in a variety of ways, but one's through giving grants to young farmers that aren't within our supply chain. And one is, through the Luminaries Project, which is trying to work to remove barriers for young farmers as a whole. If we don't have farmers in the future, we don't really have food, and that's a problem. So anyways, to answer the water, I think this is really, really important. I think absolutely we're looking at it. We're an agricultural-based company, so you better believe we're looking at water. That's a major resource that matters to us, right? In addition, I think we're really interested in ways that, to what Michael had said earlier, how can we not just take from the earth, but give back to it? So through our practices of growing food, whether it be avocados or rice, which is another water-intensive ingredient that we have, how can we not just sustain the land, but ultimately regenerate the land that food is grown upon, and the farmers who are growing it, and the communities in which they grow it. So absolutely, we're looking at water. We're looking at all of our resources very closely, and working to move towards more of a regenerative approach, whether that's starting with organic through transitional agriculture and then moving towards regenerative, supporting it that way.
That's certainly a topic of growing and current and growing importance related to water. But I do, going back to one of your earlier points related to helping the farming community, it stood out to me that Chipotle really helps the farmers through these. I think it's a minimum of a 3-year contract in some cases. Is that right? Because it really provides that predictability, because these farmers are having to invest and really make long-term decisions over cycles. Is that one? Yeah, did I summarize that right?
You did. I think the economics of farming are sort of upside down right now. And we're trying to do what we can to help ensure that we have a future of real food, that we're investing in our farmers. And the great thing is when we invest in young farmers, to your point, we're actually investing in sustainable agriculture. Over 80% of farmers who identify as young, so 40 or under, identify as sustainable farmers, which is great. So yes, within our supply chain, we do pay a premium for young farmers. We have a great partnership with Nyman Ranch, Meister Cheese, a few to name. But yes, we're working to support not just our supply, but some great farmers all over. Yeah, with the National Young Farmer Coalition. So a great partner of ours as well.
Yeah, that was really cool to see. So Jeremy, and this is, this is a general topic, but I think given Fifth Third's real leadership in renewable energy, I'll address it to you. This topic of carbon offsets, and is that an element of your all's plan? And really, what is your view on them and how they should be integrated into targets related to carbon reduction and/or just a renewable or energy plan in general, carbon emissions plan?
Yeah, it's funny, David. We're all in this industry. I think we're committed to a common set of goals we're moving towards, and at the same time, there's debate and discussion within the industry on what's valid, what's not, which ways to move are better than the other, and of course, ultimately, everybody's got to find their path. And is Michael and Caitlin have referenced already today, kind of focused on what's most important to them. In terms of offsets, our renewable energy journey began with this virtual power purchase agreement project that's now up and running down in North Carolina. And of course, it's off-site from our facilities. So it's a virtual transaction. But we feel confident in that, even though it's not directly supplying power to us as an organization, because we helped drive the creation of that project. So we now know that there's 80 megawatts of clean power coming onto the grid in North Carolina that wouldn't be there without us. And offsets you kind of look at in a similar way, depending on, the nature of the offset, what's generating them, where you are in the process. Our renewable power project gets us much closer to a carbon neutrality point than we could have possibly envisioned going back 3, 4, 5 years ago. So you start to look at the solutions as you look at an energy load, as you look at a carbon or a greenhouse gas emissions load that the organization has, and says, just like Caitlin in the garbage cans, it's like, all right, after you go after the big items, how do you now start focusing on the smaller ones? And with what's left, can you start to think about those offsets as solutions? So we are absolutely having those conversations. We know those offset projects, particularly the best ones, are doing great things in communities across the country and throughout the world. And we're excited potentially to be part of those going forward.
Excellent. Excellent. That's great to hear. Michael, what are your thoughts on this topic of carbon offsets, or just offsets in general?
Yes. Thanks, David. I know we're coming up on time, but just to be quick, a couple of thoughts. One is, look, there's been a long debate about offsets, right? And I have a personal opinion, so it's my personal opinion, but it's also one that I think the company shares, which is, look, the goal here is for us to reduce our emissions, right? To get to net zero and ultimately to restore and pull carbon out of the atmosphere. Okay, because we're emitting too much of it right now. So the first thing is you've got to reduce your emissions. Try to get it as close to zero as you can. If you offset, that means that the argument goes, you can continue to emit as long as you're, for example, planting a lot of trees to offset that. You're still emitting. So I personally feel like we need to reduce our emissions as much as possible, right? And if there is some small amount that is left over that is really, really difficult for your business to do, then you can turn and look at offsets. And there's all kinds of degrees of offsets, right? What Jeremy is talking about are much more accepted, right? In terms of you're creating more renewable energy for others to use. That's great, okay? Rather than simply continuing to emit and, for example, planting trees. Big debate on that now around what we call natural capital and how you use trees, tree planting, and other kinds of programs like this to address your carbon emissions. So I would encourage those who are viewing, there's a very active debate on this, so really explore it and understand it as you decide where you should land on it.
Absolutely. You want to avoid the risk of kind of a blank check, or even Caitlin was mentioning earlier this talk of greenwashing, et cetera. So I mean it is a debate, and certainly the sustainability purists definitely are aiming for this regenerative or planet positive approach, shall we say, to it. So we are approaching time, but Caitlin, did you have any thoughts on the carbon offset topic, or would you like to go into any closing thoughts you may have?
Sure, absolutely. So one thing I noticed in the questions quickly, someone asked if we would then not support older regenerative farmers, and that, of course, is not the case. We support farmers of all age. Right now, we have a specific grant program for young farmers, but yes, we do not age discriminate when it comes to farmers. In fact, the average age of the farmer is well over 50 years old, so we'd be foolish to discriminate based on that. And secondly, no surprise, agreeing with the panelists here, offsets are a tool. They cannot be the tool when it comes to, a carbon program. And in fact, they should be, as Michael suggested, a last resort. It's the same as, actually, and Jeremy said this well, right? It's the same as the waste. You have to do your basics. You have to have a foundational program that's working to reduce. And from there, if there are things that are maybe unavoidable, or for us, we're looking at material-based offsets. So material offsets meaning how can we invest in agriculture in a way that is material to our business, and it is sort of again a nod towards that circular economy. So can we offset the carbon produced by a burrito, per se, into regenerative wheat that is growing that tortilla. This is an example, right? These are some of the things that we're having these conversations with now. You heard it first here. So yes, offsets can be a tool. They ought not be the tool, in my opinion.
Definitely some consensus around that. And as we approach the closure here, Jeremy, any additional thoughts you'd like to add, maybe kind of in a rapid round format, just anything really quickly?
Yeah, just to reiterate, I get the question a lot. How is the pandemic impacting kind of the ESG space? And from our experience, from the partners that we talk to, the pandemic has certainly not halted the push towards ESG. Rather, there almost seems to be a growing recognition in the importance of these issues and a company's ability to adapt to change. Our ability to listen, our ability to respond to new needs, and our ability to focus on what is most important. And I think that's at the heart of ESG, but also at the heart of any successful organization. So I look forward to continuing the work. And again, thanks to you and Rubicon for teeing up the conversation today.
Absolutely. And Michael, you want to take us home with any other closing thoughts that maybe we didn't get to today?
Sure. Thanks, David. Really enjoyed this conversation. Learned a lot from my colleagues. Jeremy, boy, you're doing some really interesting things. So maybe we can do some business on investing in renewable.
Sounds great.
And just a final thought for us, which is we talk a lot about ESG, and I'm glad it's the more than the flavor of the month, I hope. But I want to make sure that we don't forget, it's not just an acronym. Right? It stands for environmental, social, and governance. And those things are not separate. They're deeply integrated, just like all of the crises we're facing today. The pandemic, climate change, the recession, and racial justice are all integrated. It's part of the same ecosystem. So when we all talk about environment, social, and governance and ESG, it is really the solution or a set of solutions that will address these integrated challenges that we're facing in the world.
I couldn't have said it better. So on that note, thank you so much, Michael, Caitlin, Jeremy, and also to the participants who took some time out of their days to listen to this dialogue. We certainly hope it was useful to you in your business and personal or professional pursuits. And thank you again. With that, we'll close out the session.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Trina, are we done?
Yes, we are. Congratulations on a successful webinar.
Great.
Okay. Hey, that was great, you guys.
Thanks again.
Really enjoyed it.